Hey, Fred. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Threat Watch, 15-minute or so podcast where we're going to talk about some news this week. So Fred and I were both in Scottsdale this week for the Lumifi Secure Summit, which for a customer meeting, I got to say was pretty damn good. We brought in some speakers. The CISO from Exabeam was there, Sean Murphy from Boeing Employees Credit Union, Michael Borgia from Davis Wright Tremaine. Who else? Brian Hurd from Stroh's Friedberg. All these guys were just really top notch. It was really good having them there. And Fred, to you, good job doing all the moderation work, especially for moderating me.
Yeah, yeah, that was probably the hardest part of the whole week was moderating you, Mike. But it was a fantastic event. I was so thrilled to have like some really top-notch people up there, so I get to do the interviewing rather than having somebody asking me questions. I thought that was awesome. And I want to thank our sponsors, Exabeam, Vectra, Elastic,
Yeah.
some of the best food I've ever had at one
Yeah.
of these events. So that was really fantastic. So thank you to them.
Yes. And thanks for the pair of morning headaches I had. Okay, on to the news. Okay, so we got to talk about this thing because this is the gift that keeps on giving, right? These guys are back. The ongoing PowerSchool incident. Okay, so PowerSchool is an information management tool used by school districts across the country, and it holds information on something like 60 million students. So someone used, we don't know who, used compromised credentials to get in and grab all the data, okay? And then they extorted PowerSchool. They didn't use any ransomware, right? It was just records. They said that if PowerSchool paid, they would delete the data. Well, they got paid, and it turns out they didn't delete the data, and now individual school districts are being extorted. You read this?
Oh yeah, this is I would say there's a broken record story that I've been saying
Yeah.
probably every time I mention ransomware, and people say, "Well, what about the exfiltrated data? Even if I can recover, what about the data?" And I'll say it now, and I'll say it again: that data's gone. Okay, if you think
Yeah.
the people that have learned a million ways to extort and cheat you and steal from you are somehow motivated by anything but the profit motive, that just doesn't compute. Frank, it just doesn't pass the sniff test. These people have stolen your data. They're going to do whatever they can to monetize it. The other part of this is, even if the data doesn't get released by the group you're initially dealing with, those people move around. They take the data with them. They wash the data, and it gets exposed or gets sold to somebody else, and ends up in some consolidated breach dump that ends up on the dark web. So I think it's time we all said it's a fallacy to suggest that once your data is gone, there's anything you can and frankly probably should do, because that data is going to get exposed no matter what. And this is fascinating in that I think there was some indignation by PowerSchool that they
Yeah, I
showed
saw
us a
that.
video of us deleting our data, and I'm thinking, are you kidding? That come on. Come on, they make a video of anything these days, let alone something anybody could fake, in 5 minutes on their iPhone. So I don't get, why people have not woken up to the fact that when your data has been exfiltrated, it's gone, and you need to treat it as such. And unfortunately, it's time to start reporting it as stolen data. And there's no concept of actually putting the cat back in the bag. That's what I
Yeah.
think.
Well, there's going to be lawsuits, and I think that's the leverage, that the criminals have is if we make this public, right, you're going to get a class action suit. You should be thinking that already. All right. You lost the data. It has become public because it's in the hands of someone unauthorized. And whether or not they expose that, out for sale or just, make it public to make sure that you end up, paying, the millions of dollars to get out of that suit, you're right, it's gone. And I can kind of see the logic and like we'd really like to avoid the class action suit. So, you know, we'll deal with these guys and they seem legit and they were just believing people whose job it is to be out there criming, right? Well, but why were they storing social security numbers and medical details in there anyway? Why was that even in there? Okay. So you probably saw this, City of Toronto said they did not provide that data to be stored, and they have no intention of paying. They're one of the school districts that's being extorted, individually, right? So, this is different from ransomware extortion, right? You can build your network back from backups rather than pay for a decryption key, but extortion based on stolen records is more virulent. They know that lawyers are waiting for these disclosures to happen to immediately file a class action suit, and that's leverage for the perps, right? The only way to change that is with a national privacy statute that supersedes this state's right to have a private right of action for people whose records have been lost, right? It, our own laws are providing criminals with this leverage, I think, is my point there. And I've made that point before, and I'm blue in the face talking about it, and people don't listen to me anymore. So,
well, I think the sad part is this is a persistent threat for people early in their life. This is data that can be used over and over again with people who don't have a big credit history or things that they want to take advantage of. So this is something that has a long tail for, unfortunately, potentially for the victims as well.
Yeah, right. They could find out decades from now that someone's been buying cars and homes with their name, and just bankrupting them over and over, whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's let this one go for now. I'm sure this is going to be back. Right. I just think there's going to be gigantic lawsuits here. I was actually interviewed about this morning from Billy Hurley at Morning Brew, and we talked about this, and he had some good insights, and I'll just wait for the story to come out. But it was an interesting interview. Okay, in another case of broad scale ponage, let's call it. Remember, we talked about the Darkula phishing as a service platform. Okay, remember that? And it's this thing has made it so easy. It's you use their portal, you enter the URL of the company you want to impersonate, and it sets up fake login sites, and it uses Gen AI to write the bait messages, right? Well, it turns out they've been pretty successful at that. And it seems they're also into the text messaging business, because all of those things, unpaid toll payment, that's these guys, all right? At least for a large part of that. So this number boggles the mind, okay? Darkula phishing as a service steals 884,000 credit cards through those text messages. Holy cow, right? And this is on 13 million clicks. So I mean, that's not a 100% rate of return, but 884,000 credit cards. People, come on.
Yeah, this is it's getting too easy, frankly. And of course, what they're doing, not only are they commoditizing it, but they're starting to think about, hey, it's more than just going after people at email. It's really targeting Android and iPhones.
Yeah.
In a lot of different approaches here. And I know the first time I ever saw the in our state is good to go. It's the road toll thing. My wife came running into, my office while I'm in the middle of a meeting going, oh my God, they're, going to take my license away. And I'm grabbing the phone out of her hand and telling her, don't touch that. But yeah, I mean, the stuff is incredibly well written. I mean, I had to take a look. And of course, I know that first off, that's never a way that you're going to be contacted by anybody to settle some kind of a legal thing, like you're going to lose your license. It's not going to be a text message, for Pete's sake. But they're also using the RCS and iMessage systems, which, instead of just pure SMS, now they have richer content to take advantage of. Deep fakery becomes a lot more convincing, frankly. So they're stepping up as people become more, let's say, tech enabled. When they move to more advanced services that everybody loves to have, they're making it so these auto-generated phishing kits can create perfectly created phishing, lookalikes for particular brands that everybody uses every day. So now I guess they've got their own generative AI now working, to build all this stuff. It's you just need to be somebody with a motivation now to take advantage of these things. And 884,000 cards is kind of a big motivation. Frankly, if you can get 10% of that, I mean, it might be able to retire. So it's a little scary. I don't know where you think this is all going, Mike.
Well, I mean, so 13 million clicks, 884,000 cards, that's a 7% success rate. Okay. So 7 out of every 100 people that got that gave up a credit card number. Okay. That is astonishing. All right. But now the question is, what happens to the cards? All right. I mean, this is not the same as, info that's stolen from a corporation that is they're going to issue you new cards and monitor your credit and stuff, right? This is all on you, folks. And, my assumption is this is all going to go on the dark web for sale. And it's probably full track data, zip codes, CVV, everything they need for fraud. So I hope, and I don't even know who would do this at this point, but I hope that there's some kind of communication effort to reach out to folks and let them know if they gave up their card to this thing, they need to get a new card issued right away. I don't know what else you would tell people about this, except, don't be gullible, but it's too late for that. Okay, that all is just depressing. I mean, seeing that kind of rate of return for criminals for something that simple, I mean, you could call it simple, you could call it brilliant. It worked. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. So look, we got to talk about a couple of stories here with the good guys winning, because we're having our backsides handed to us, and that's all we talk about. We notched up a couple of wins this week. Actually, it's the infighting and competition among criminals has led to RansomHub, which we've talked about, going dark, at least for the time being. And the LockBit ransomware gang has been hacked and their internal communications made public, including negotiations with victims. Right. So RansomHub has gone dark, and they think it's because, they got a little scared when they saw law enforcement breathing on LockBit and Alpha V and some of these others. But LockBit just got hacked, and it's almost a funny story, but I consider both these to be wins. You read these?
I did, and I'm trying to grok exactly what's going on here, because I think some of this might be like the Genovese family fighting the Colombo family, for control of some cyber turf, right? In the mob land of the cyber world. So I don't know. We say it's a win. Certainly is a win. Anything that degrades these operations is a win. But who's doing it is, and then there's also maybe the backdoor of the Russian government has seemed to start taking a more serious or taking over a little bit more control over these gangs. I think they were somewhat autonomous. They actually went after a couple of them. Most people think because they didn't pay their tithe to their masters as they were moving along,
or they went after Russian targets.
Right? So they're criminals here. I mean, we started this whole talk, Mike, with they're criminals. Criminals do criminal things, and they do it to other criminals, right? In fact, sometimes it's easier to steal from other criminals, especially in the cyber world, where somebody with a Uzi is not going to show up at your front door, at least not as easily as doing it across town, gangland style. So. Look, the funny, and the irony, they left a note, right? This hacktivist, I believe, was probably Polish, claimed to be from Prague, is the one that hit up LockBit and said, "Don't do crime. Crime is bad. Love, XOXO from Prague." So my guess it's another gang. Hacktivist, maybe. I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
Well, first of all, I think your point about nobody's going to show up at the door with Uzis reminds me of another story this week about in the UK how they have criminals in proximity like we do now here as well, like scattered spider, right? And they've gotten really violent in the UK, up to and including dousing people with gasoline and locking them in the trunk of a car. The UK police, law enforcement, has actually pulled people out of the trunks of cars. So it turns out they do this stuff, right? But for LockBit, this is the second time for them, right? The first one was when their infrastructure was taken over by law enforcement. I think it was called Operation Kronos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, other ransomware groups have experienced leaks, Conti, Black Basta, right? There's other ones, right? But for RansomHub, which was very recently named one of the most active and virulent gangs out there, right? They were known to take down healthcare organizations kind of preferentially. This is a weird exit. And I think that they're all going to be back, right? They reconstitute into these other, gangs. They come up with new names, or they join, they affiliate with others. But perversely, they may come back as an affiliate of Dragon Force, right? Which is trying to use the cartel model. We talked about this, to establish the centralized governance over all the gangs. So, we notch these as wins. It's probably a win for a week, right?
Yeah.
And then they're going to be back. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's time to end that conversation, because if we take the next step, we talk for the next 3 days about the end of and the reconstitution of an entire new crime world that's unfortunately we're going to be faced with. So tell us, Mike, what are you going to leave us with? Again, hopefully leave us with a little, maybe an absurd smile on our face.
All right. Well, let's go for absurd. Okay. So more AI absurdity, because it's too easy to find. And this one actually collides with the Constitution of the United States. So, this was from Ars Technica, which is one of my favorite places to look for articles for the News Blast. And there's a court case right now that alleges that an AI chatbot caused a teen's suicide. Okay. I'll spare you the conversation that led up to this, but for the defense, for the company's called Character Technologies, they're the developer of the chatbot. They assert that the First Amendment doesn't just protect human speech, and chatbot outputs should be considered pure speech that deserves the highest degree of protection under the First Amendment of the Constitution. Okay? So forget AI bots becoming sentient. I mean, that doesn't even matter since they have constitutional protections. What next? Are they going to be allowed to, donate to super PACs and buy senators? I'm sure the Roberts Court is interested in this, right? That it is so absurd that someone would actually use that as a defense. Well, the chatbot has free speech rights. Come on. All right. We got to get out of here. I'm actually using internet off my phone because our internet burped on us over here. So I got to see if that's been fixed. But don't forget to sign up for the Infosec Insider Daily News Blast. Watch our site for events, including free monthly security awareness training coming up on the last Friday of the month. So, Fred, I will see you next week. Have a good weekend.
Have a great weekend, Mike. We'll talk to you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.